Have you ever stepped into an elevator, hit the button for the top floor, and felt, just for a split second, like your knees buckle a little bit, like you suddenly got heavier? Or going down, you get that stomach drop feeling, almost like you're floating? We feel these weird phantom weight changes all the time, right? But what's actually happening to your body physically? Think about this. What if you grabbed a bathroom scale, dragged it into that elevator, put it on the floor, and actually stood on it during the ride? Would the dial just stay the same? Or would it physically change depending on how the elevator is moving? Most people would totally guess their weight stays the exact same, but physics tells a very different and honestly, a way more fascinating story. By the end of this explainer, you're going to understand exactly why this happens, and you'll be able to prove it mathematically. You'll learn how to confidently calculate this apparent weight. Plus, we're going to master solving two-dimensional force problems, like imagine pulling a massive ship through the water. And finally, you'll learn how to seamlessly combine the forces we study in dynamics with the motion equations of kinematics. These are totally practical, real-world skills you're walking away with today. Section 1. The elevator weight illusion. So let's break down the exact mechanics of what happens the very moment an elevator starts moving. We call this the elevator weight illusion, but trust me, the forces at play here are very, very real. To figure out what the scale reads, we lean on Newton's second law. Force equals mass times acceleration. You see, the scale isn't magically measuring gravity. It's just measuring how hard it has to push up against your feet. That upward push is the normal force, or the scale force, which we call F sub s. To accelerate you upward, the scale has to fight gravity. That's the mg part. And it has to push you with extra force just to make you speed up. That's the ma part. So the scale simply reads your mass times acceleration plus your mass times gravity. Okay, let's make this super concrete with a quick example. Imagine a 75-kilogram person standing on our elevator scale. Step 1, let's say the elevator accelerates upward at 1.20 meters per second squared. Step 2, we apply Newton's second law. We know the net force is the scale pushing up minus gravity pulling down. And step 3, we just solve for the scale force by plugging in the numbers. So we take 75 kilograms times 1.20 for our acceleration and add that to 75 kilograms times 9.8 for standard gravity. And boom, the result is 825 newtons. This right here perfectly illustrates why you feel heavier. If this same person were just standing perfectly still in their bathroom at home, their resting weight would only be 735 newtons. But because that elevator is actively speeding up towards the sky, the scale has to push up harder than gravity just to accelerate the person upwards. So for that brief little moment, the scale actually reads roughly 185 pounds instead of their normal 165 pounds. Crazy, right? But wait, here is a massive trap that so many students fall into. What happens a few seconds later when the elevator stops speeding up and just cruises smoothly between floors at a constant velocity? Let's contrast these two states because it's absolutely crucial. When accelerating upward, your acceleration is positive. But the instant you hit a constant speed, even if you are rocketing upwards at 20 miles per hour, your acceleration drops to exactly 0. Because your acceleration is 0, the m times a part of our formula just completely disappears. The scale reading drops instantly right back down to 735 newtons. It goes right back to your true resting weight. This is exactly why you only feel that heavy, knees-buckling sensation right when the elevator starts or stops, and never during the smooth middle of the ride. Let's do a quick check to make sure this is really locking in. What would that bathroom scale read if, hypothetically, the elevator cable snapped and you were in complete freefall? Think about it for a second. Your downward acceleration would be perfectly equal to gravity. In our formula, acceleration a becomes negative g, so the mass times a perfectly cancels out the mass times g. The result? 0. The scale reads absolute 0, and you would literally appear completely weightless. Section 2, tackling two-dimensional forces. Now that we totally get vertical forces, let's up the ante a bit and see how this works in a 2D world. Because in real life, very rarely do forces act in just one perfect straight line. Now, resolving two-dimensional forces can seem a bit intimidating at first, but honestly, it's exactly like walking city blocks. Imagine you walk 3 blocks east and then 4 blocks north. You took 2 perpendicular paths. But your overall displacement, your net force, is really just the direct diagonal line from your start to your endpoint. We just use the good old Pythagorean theorem to find the length of that diagonal path. Let's apply this to a giant real-world scenario. Picture two tugboats pushing a massively heavy 5 million kilogram flat-bottom barge. One tugboat is pushing perfectly east and the other is pushing perfectly north. Meanwhile, the water is creating a drag force against them. So how do we find that drag force? Step 1, we use the Pythagorean theorem to combine those two perpendicular tugboat forces into one single applied diagonal force. Step 2, we figure out that this net force is what dictates the direction of the barge's acceleration. And step 3, we use Newton's second law again. The applied force minus the water's drag force is going to equal the mass of the barge times its acceleration. So when we square the force of the first tugboat, add it to the square of the second tugboat, and take the square root, we get 450,000 newtons. The crucial takeaway here is that this 450,000 newtons is the raw, combined pulling power that the tugboats are exerting diagonally on that barge. But let's say we know the barge is only accelerating at 0.075 meters per second squared. Mass times acceleration gives us 375,000 newtons of net force actually moving the ship. We subtract that from the 450,000 newtons the tugboats are pouring in, and what's left over? 75,000 newtons. That 75,000 newtons is our drag force. It's the physical, literal resistance of the water pushing back against the hull of the ship. Section 3. Tension at different angles. All right, so far we've dealt with perfect rectangles and straight 90-degree lines. Let's introduce our third real-world application, looking at how non-equal angles can radically change how forces are distributed. Picture a standard 15-kilogram traffic light suspended right above a busy intersection, but instead of being perfectly centered, it's held up by two wires at different angles. Let's say one wire is at a shallow 30 degrees and the other is much steeper at 45 degrees. To solve for the tension in these specific cables, we have to project the forces onto vertical and horizontal axes. The horizontal forces absolutely have to cancel each other out so the light doesn't just swing sideways, and the vertical forces have to perfectly add up to support the light's weight. Now, you might be looking at this setup and thinking, wait a minute, why aren't the tensions in the traffic light wires just equal if they're holding up the exact same object? And I love that question. It is such a common point of confusion. Here is the secret. When things are perfectly symmetrical, tension is equal. But the very moment you change those angles, the entire balance shifts. When we actually run the trigonometry, the results are pretty surprising. The wire at the shallow 30 degrees has a tension of 108 newtons, but the steeper wire, the one at 45 degrees, has a tension of 132 newtons. Why the difference? It's simply because the 45-degree wire is oriented more vertically. Because of its angle, it is fundamentally forced to bear a much greater portion of the downward pull of gravity. So, the rule of thumb? The more vertical the support is, the more of the actual weight it ends up carrying. Section 4, combining dynamics and kinematics. Okay, let's tie this all together into the broader picture. We're going to bridge the gap between the forces we've been calculating, which is dynamics, and the physical motion they actually create. Just as a really quick refresher, kinematics is simply the study of motion. It looks at velocity, acceleration, and time without really caring about what caused the motion in the first place. Dynamics, using Newton's laws, tells us about the invisible forces that cause that acceleration. Physics becomes incredibly powerful when we combine these two. We can observe how fast something is moving, figure out its acceleration, and then reverse engineer it to find the exact forces pushing it. Let's look at a perfect example of this. Say a 70-kilogram soccer player starts from rest and sprints forward, hitting a top speed of 8.00 meters per second in exactly 2.50 seconds. How hard are his cleats actually pushing into the turf to make that happen? We tackle this in two simple parts. Step 1, we use kinematics. Acceleration is literally just the change in velocity divided by the time it took. Step 2, we use dynamics. We take that acceleration number and just plug it right into F equals ma. So 8 meters per second divided by 2.5 seconds gives us an acceleration of 3.2 meters per second squared. Multiply that by his 70-kilogram mass and boom, we get 224 newtons. That 224 newtons is the exact amount of backward force the soccer player absolutely must exert into the ground to propel his body forward to that top speed. For context, that's about 50 pounds of average force driven straight through his feet into the dirt. Before we wrap up, let's just quickly summarize the absolute key takeaways you need to remember. First, always draw a free body diagram. It makes complex, invisible forces so much simpler to see. Second, if forces are at weird angles, just resolve them into horizontal and vertical components. Remember the city blocks. Third, think back to the elevator. Your normal force does not always equal your resting weight. And finally, remember that you can always link the speed and time of an object to the forces pushing it just by using F equals ma. So, you now officially have the tools to calculate the forces driving everything from a regular bathroom scale to a massively heavy river barge. But what about the tiny forces holding the actual atoms of that scale together? Or the immense gravity keeping that barge in the water? Now that you've mastered these everyday forces, how on earth do these laws apply to the fundamental forces that govern the entire universe? Well, that is exactly what we are going to uncover in our next explainer. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep questioning the physics all around you.